Okay, let's keep diving further as we come into the watery emotions. So, money really is water. It's flow. Flow. Think about it. Where is your money held? It's held in the banks. Oh, like a river bank. What do we call money? We can call it our flow. We can also call it a currency. So, money is deeply rooted into water. Emotions are also deeply rooted into water. It is a very watery and fluid experience. Sometimes it might feel like we are gently cruising down the Nile, and other times it might feel like we are bouncing out the back of a boat, a blow up boat, whatever they're called, as we're going down the rapids. And so our money is deeply, deeply rooted in our emotions, especially the emotions of fear, worthiness, guilt, love, shame. So let's dive a little into our emotional landscape and how that links into our money. So the wealthy woman handles her emotions with grace. So it doesn't mean that she does not have emotions. And when we talk about doing emotional clearing or emotional regulation, it's not about getting rid of our emotions. Actually, our emotions are very often there to show us something. They're there to show us that something is happening internally, often something that we need to look at or consider. And without emotions, life would be pretty darn boring. It would be a very black and white robotic experience. Being human means that we do have a rainbow of emotions and we shift and we move through different emotions. Some of those perhaps in the unconscious, like being unaware of why we don't feel okay, and some things very much obviously in the conscious, knowing exactly what it is that is setting off an emotional response or reaction within us. So when I say that she handles it with grace, it means that she knows how to feel her emotions, how to be with those emotions, and how to allow them the space to move. Allow them to be in a response state rather than a reactive state. So she's able to go, oh my gosh, I'm stressed right now. What am I stressed about? What do I need to do in order to reduce that stress? Or I'm angry right now. What am I angry about? What do I need to do in order to shift the anger? She understands that her emotional landscape is fluid and that she can move with that fluidity. So, the answer here is clearing your financial emotional blocks, learning strategies to regulate your emotions, especially when handling large sums of money, or also on the opposite extreme, handling moments where money is tight and stressful. Stress being one of the major contributors when it comes to finance, our money causing stress, and therefore our state of stress causing problems with money. And so we go on in this in this cycle. What's happening when we are experiencing stress is we are experiencing high cortisol levels. So, a hormone that's working in your body with your emotions and with your fight flight response, with your stress response, which we'll go deeper into in a moment. One of the things to understand when it comes to stress and high cortisol in the body is that actually, over a long period of time, cortisol causes a lot of issues when it comes into the body. And so those high levels of stress can cause us to get unwell. They can also cause us to come into a place of not feeling safe within the body, which is how emotions then links into embodiment, the next pillar of needing to come into a space of feeling safe within the body. Unfortunately, we all are living in a society that basically praises stress. We are living in a time where busy is like kind of like, oh my God, I'm busy. Oh, I'm busy too. No, I'm more busy. it's seen to be like almost a societal platform to reach, is to be in this state of busyness, to be in this state of push, but also that everywhere we go, as I mentioned in mindset, everywhere we go and everywhere we look, we are being marketed to or also fed to by the media in different ways to keep us in a stress response, to keep the body into what's called fight, flight, freeze, or a stress response. There's actually fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop, but mostly we talk about fight, flight, and freeze as this stress response. The cortisol is part of that stress response, one of the triggers of that stress response. We are supposed to go into our fight, flight, freeze as a way of survival. And it's supposed to be, for example, a tiger jumps out. I would like to run from the tiger. So I would go into flight. We take off. And if you watch animals or even children, what's then supposed to happen is you shake it off. And then we come back to homeostasis. But we are now in living in a society where we don't take the foot off the pedals, so to speak. So we are in our accelerator, we're in this state of stress, and we're trying to hold the brake down at the same time. You know, when a car does a burnout, that's what's happening to our nervous system by having these floods of cortisol, by being stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, and that being our normal state of being, which is deeply, deeply linked into our money, because often our stress or our fear is incredibly linked to whether we do or don't have money, whether we feel safe or whether we don't feel safe, whether we feel like we have enough or we don't have enough. This is all linked into stress. And of course, then working hard, working too hard, too much pressure. All of this has a deep, deep impact on the body. So the limbic system is the part of the brain that really is mostly controlled into your emotions. So you have your amygdala. You may have heard of amygdala hijack. What's really happening is the front part of your brain here is like your executive functioning center. It's like your CEO. It's the one that's able to think clearly, to strategize, to come up with plans, to look at a problem such as, oh, I have this issue with my money or my finances, and to look at that problem from different angles and come up with a very clear, logical solution. It's supposed to work in conjunction still with the emotional part of our brain, our limbic system. But what actually ends up happening when we are in this high state of stress, it's called amygdala hijack. And what it is that basically we've come into this state of stress, fight, flight, freeze. Oh my God, I saw a tiger, but maybe the tiger was a bill that arrived in the mail. I opened up the bill and like, oh my God, I don't have that much money. It's more than what I thought. And we go into the stress response. The amygdala starts to hijack the front of the brain. Because if I was being chased by a tiger, I don't need so much to be thinking logically about, oh, that's a tiger. I think that's coming towards me. Maybe it's going to eat me. I think I should run. Instead, I need my body to shut down any part of me that might think and instead go into this emotional response and get me out of there, which will cause all sorts of different things to be happening in my body, which we won't go into right now. I just want you to understand this piece. And basically, the brainstem is the survival part of our brain. So all you have is the survival part of your brain, and here this limbic system, the amygdala, that's put us into hijack. This part of the brain has switched off. So an example of the tiger is, oh, I open the bill. Oh my gosh, that's more money than what I have. I don't know what to do. Oops, amygdala hijack. I'm now down here in survival. My body is also having a lot of responses, that cortisol response that I spoke about as well. Now I can't think clearly. I can't see great solutions around what we've talked about in previous videos, where it's like, what is the actual problem? Stop looking at the symptom and find the cause. I can't do that because this part of my brain is no longer functioning. I'm just thinking how to get out of here. Now I've got this bill and I'm in survival and I don't know what to do. And we end up in a physical contraction to it. We end up not able to think clearly. We end up with stress hormones moving through our body. And then we end up in this difficult spiral. Now we are actually constantly being bombarded everywhere that we go to be in states of fear or stress or survival response, which is stopping us from being able to really see nice and clearly and find our way through. So, when it comes to your money, your finances, creating wealth, what you could be doing is I'm not going to look at it. Freeze. Freeze. I can't look at that. I don't know what to do. Head in the sand. Pretend it's not happening. Don't look at the bill. Don't open it. Tuck it away somewhere. Or we could be going into fight. I'm not paying that. I'm going to fight that. It's wrong. Everything's wrong. Everybody else is wrong. It's bad. There's all these things that I need to fight, or even an internal fight with myself. I'm bad and wrong could be also the story. Or flight. I'm just going to take off. I'm out of here, which again could look like I'm not going to look at that, right? The freeze could be I don't know what to do with it. The flight could be I'm not going to look at it. So we need to start to look at what are the different emotional patterns that you play out with money so that you can start to come up with some strategies of not going into this fight, flight, freeze and instead being able to remain connected into the front part of your brain so that, and this is one of the reasons why I created the cognitive brain rewiring method, is like so I can reconnect the parts of my brain that are kind of taking off and going elsewhere and not allowing me to be able to think clearly when I need to think clearly. So Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad says financial IQ is 90% emotional IQ and only 10% technical information about finance or money. Warren Buffett, one of the world's richest investors, says if you cannot control your emotions, you cannot control money. These are so deeply linked. One of the big pieces is safety. Safety and security. Do I feel safe? Often, this is the programming that has been imprinted in us from a very young age. The beliefs and the stories that we may have made about money and did I feel safe could be playing out even now. You might, for example, one person might be saying, in order to feel safe, I need to have X amount of money in my savings account. And that is the only way that I can feel safe, is to have X amount. Somebody else might actually be doing the opposite, is that there's so much in this capacity of I don't know how to feel safe, is that they keep on bringing their money back down to zero or less than zero because their amygdala is hijacking and they're in a state of unsafety within their own inner emotional responses and reactions. So money is deeply connected to our capacity to feel safe in the world. When we can understand that money is so linked to our sense of safety and whether we feel safe or not, then we can also look at those moments when we don't feel like we have the money, why we might behave in certain ways or do certain things. This is how safe money becomes linked to so many different things. So an example might be, which I have one of these examples is deeply with one of my clients that I've worked with, is she had all sorts of stories around money and not feeling safe and feeling out of control with money. So when the money got down low and she would go into a not feeling safe space in her body, then she would start to overeat to compensate because that's something that she can control. She didn't feel like she could control the finances, but she can control the food. Right. So this is where we start to see how things can be linked together between money and relationships, money and feeling safe, money and feeling worthy, whether we do or do not feel worthy of money. Might be that I only feel worthy when I have it, or I don't feel worthy of the money. Same when it comes to love. They're so deeply linked again, especially from childhood. that whether we were taken care of, whether we felt supported, the stories that were happening around money in our home and in our household, did that allow me to feel like I was loved? Or did I make stories because my parents needed to go to work? I mean, I know for myself, my mom was a single mom. She needed to go to work. So we can start to create these stories of I'm not loved and it must be because of the money, or money is more important than me, or I'll only be loved if I have money. I'll only be able to have a relationship if I have money. That's the only way someone will come into a relationship with me. Again, something we've been deeply programmed with externally. When I spoke about in one of the previous videos about how women have only been able to have our own bank account since 1974, that's 50 years. That's insane. So then we start to link that in previously we needed to be in a relationship with a man was the expectation, who had money, who would take care of us, and that was how we were safe. So we were loved and we were safe because they had the money, right? That is how generations past it has been programmed into us, and on some levels that can still be playing out. We're still programmed with that when we see things such as gosh, what are they called? I don't know what it's called, but sell the pictures of your feet, sell the pictures of your pretty feet and earn lots of money. And what we're programmed with that is it's men who are paying women money for selling part of their body, right? So for eons, we've been programmed in this way. So that love or sex equals money, that we also need to be either be provided for, or we need to provide part of ourselves for money in return for love. All sorts of interesting beliefs and patterns that can be playing out here that is impacting your inner emotional experience when it comes to money. So, beginning to understand what is your own triggers around money allows you to, first of all, see what's happening, take control of your own situation, and then be able to clear those emotional anchors that have been installed into your nervous system throughout your life so that you can create a different outcome. So again, we already talked about like knowing your worth, that it can be so deeply linked into money. I've touched on a little bit that you could have received some of these stories from your family. Intergenerationally, we actually take on a lot of the money stories, money beliefs, programming, especially if there have been traumas from either our mother or our grandmother. They get passed down the line. It's actually now been proven through epigenetics. So, say, for example, your mother, or even let's go further, say, for example, your grandmother or your great grandmother were living in a state of the depression, or through war, or through the Holocaust. They would have had different genes along their DNA, different genes that would have been switched on or off depending on the trauma that they were experiencing. Those genes, the being on or off in the on or off expression, would have been passed down through the DNA to you. Now, the beautiful thing is, just like we can rewire our nervous system, we can also change our gene expression throughout our life. But what would have happened is it's been passed down to you in a certain way. So it's literally, again, like this fish in water. It's something that we can't see because it's so deeply a part of us that we don't even know that it's there. So you could be playing out interesting money patterns that maybe don't seem to make much sense to you. But if you look back down the generations, they might start to make a little bit more sense. For example, if someone in your family was experiencing the depression or famine, or money is hard to come by and food is hard to come by and it's stressful and we need to scrimp and save every penny, And that's showing up in your DNA. That could be showing up in your genes, sorry, that could be showing up in a number of different ways. It could be showing up as doing the same pattern, but it also could be showing up as the opposite is one thing that could happen. They needed to scrimp and save. I need to do the opposite. But it could, when it's really happening on a gene level, it's more than likely something similar. So it's worth looking at what are your money patterns, what's the programming and conditioning, and what can you see has been the history throughout your family. And when you start to look at that and then you can start to shift the gene expression to something new. Also, oh, I thought I had a picture there of a womb. I do not. So, also, what's worth considering is that you were inside your grandmother's womb. So now not only are we looking on this gene expression, but we are also starting to look at what was happening when you were held within the womb. So many of our emotional programmings actually come from before we were even born. It's just the way that we started life. You were already in your grandmother's womb. Anyone who doesn't know this will be like, what are you talking about? No, I wasn't. So we are born with every egg. Women are born with every egg that they are going to have in their lifetime. So that means that the potential of you as the egg was in your mother's womb when she was in her mother's womb. So, the stresses and the traumas that your grandmother were experiencing and that your mother was experiencing whilst you were in her womb can have a massive, massive impact. There is a lot of scientific research now about the stress that a mother is in, a woman is in when she is pregnant, and what that actually passes on down to her children. So, these are such fascinating pieces for us to look at, because when you are looking at your emotional programming, your conditioning, we need to be able to again get to the root cause. What is the root cause of what you are doing? So I'm actually just going to stop sharing this for a minute so that I can connect with you a little bit more. So an example might be fear. What sets me into a place of fear is going to be completely different to what sets you into a place of fear. My way I express fear is going to also be completely different to the way that you express fear. We all have our own story that we have made up and the way that we hold that pattern. So let's just use fear as an example, right? If I want to get to the root cause of what causes fear for me, I need to go probably back till I was quite young. And with emotional clearing, what we can do is we can pinpoint and this is one of the tools that I teach you in mastering your emotions of money, mastering the emotions of money. It's also, we go into it in my other programs as well, but mastering the emotions of money. One of the things that we really focus on is teaching you a very powerful yet simple tool where you will use self-muscle testing, and you can go back and pinpoint exactly what age you were when you began to anchor or imprint a certain emotional response. Have you ever had those moments where your emotional response doesn't really make sense for the experience that you're in? That is because it has been imprinted at a different time, at a different age, and you are simply now in the reaction of something being triggered. You would have heard, oh, I'm triggered, or I'm in an emotional trigger. And it doesn't make sense to anybody around you, and it might not even make much logical sense to you. Sometimes you can go into an emotion and be like a reaction and think, I don't like, why did I just yell at that person? Or why did I just suddenly start crying about that? I don't even know like what happened. My body just seemed to run off into this emotion. When we use emotional clearing and we use our muscle testing tool, we can actually find like, when was that imprinted? What age was that imprinted? What was the story around that was happening at that age that it was imprinted? And then we can clear it and rewire ourselves so that we no longer have emotional reactions. Instead, we're able to have emotional responses. This is where really we're able to hold ourselves with grace through emotions when we're able to repattern and rewire the old stories. So let me just reshare my screen with you again. So what's the solution? Especially if emotions came up as one of your lower pillars, then the solution is learning how to clear your emotional blocks. Learning an emotional clearing tool to me is imperative in life. This is something that I've been teaching now for a decade in emotional clearing and emotional mastery, and witnessing that this is the key point that changes my clients' lives. When you can clear your emotional programming, you don't only clear how you feel, you clear the actions that you do because of how you feel, and therefore the results that you get. You also start to clear on an identity level. All the places where you're playing out weird patterns, not being whom you want to be, we get to get in there and basically surgically shift them, remove them, clear them, rewire them. So you want to be able to clear your emotional blocks, rewire your conditioning, and reduce that stress. We need to reduce that stress response that I was talking about, where we go into the amygdala hijack, where we've got the cortisol overflow, where we're in this fight, flight, freeze response. We need to drastically reduce those stress levels. And again, this is how we link into embodiment, which is the next pillar, because we also want to begin to regulate the nervous system, which is where we head over into next when we start to talk about embodiment. We need to have the tools to be able to master our emotions in order to be able to really deeply regulate our nervous system and to shift the outcomes and the results that we're getting in our life. So, if you'd like to go deeper into this, which no matter where you are, even if you scored highly on this, I just feel like having emotional clearing tools is like a life mastery skill that everybody should have. I wish that it was taught in schools. That's how deeply I believe in emotional clearing tools. And so in my Master the Emotions of Money, that's exactly what we do. I teach you wealth clearing. I teach you how to do emotional clearing, how to specifically do wealth and money clearing, how to reprogram your old emotions into a new way, and how to start to really shift your current reality. As always, if you're someone who is like, I want to go all in, I'm ready for deep, I want to go into all of the pillars at the same time, I don't want to be doing the one at a time, Zephyria, just give me access to everything. That's what's in the Wealth Incubator. So each of these programs that I'm telling you about actually are part of the Wealth Incubator. So the Master Your Money Mindset and the Master the Emotions of Money, these are all parts of the Wealth Incubator. So let's keep going.